But the school likes it.
The school, yeah, yeah. Yeah, why do you think we are all set up, to do all these things, discipline, right? Discipline is one thing that, follow orders, right? Follow orders, right? When you're a student, most of the time you basically following orders from your instructor, right? You assume the instructor is, has all the knowledge, and you rely on the instructor for everything, right? That is like a dependence, right? But the focus is on the ability of following orders, being disciplined, be on time, and if you think a little bit about when mass education really started, what is the purpose, right? Uh, it started really with the Industrial Revolution. And during the Industrial Revolution, what was the purpose? To educate the masses. What was the purpose?
So they can work in the factories.
They can work in a factory. And in a factory, they want what? Leaders? They want followers, right? People that are going to follow, the instructions without question, right? So everything in our education system until today, it's all built up in this relationship of authority, that the instructors have, and the students are submissive. Okay, so this is not something that I'm just bringing this, from my idea. This is, is being supported by other, scholars, like Foucault, for instance, he's saying that schools classify students using grades and tests to establish a normal behavior. Discipline is a technique of power, right? And regards individuals both as objects and instruments. Another researcher also educated, Gatto, we could encourage the best qualities of the youth, like curiosity, adventure, and resilience, but instead we school them to become dependent, compliant, and afraid to think by themselves. So, does constant observation by instructors, that's one thing. All this fits into the industrial and social order, right? Another educator, his name is Paulo Freire. He says, this is very interesting. Education either functions as an instrument in which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system. So our education system is really trying to perpetuate this behavior within our system, or becomes the practice of freedom. So, we could change the education system to become the practice of freedom, by means men and women deal critically and with creativity, with reality, and discover how to participate in the transformation of the world. They don't want us to transform the world, right? If they want to transform, they do it their way. That's how it is. So education does not change the world. Education changes people, and people change the world. Okay. Noam Chomsky. The school system is designed to teach obedience and conformity and prevent the child's natural capacity for development. Socrates, ask the question, then examine whether what they are told are right. right? So we are not supposed to question things, right? But my class, when I have my class, I want students to question everything, right? What if, yes, it's true that, if I have an object, it's going to fall here on Earth, right? If I have an experiment like the feather and the hammer, and I let them both fall here on Earth, what do you think is going to happen? Which one is going to fall first, the hammer or the feather?
They're all both gonna fall at the same time.
Yeah, but if I do the experiment here on Earth, you're going to see that the feather, is floating, right? If I want to do this on the moon, right, we're going to see that both arrive at the same time, right? But what is the difference, right? What is the difference here? Well, the difference is on the moon there is no air, right? There's no air resistance. And here we are misled to think that a heavy object is going to fall first. And that is a misconception that we all have based on our experience, right? If we were born on the moon, we would never have that problem, right? We all be good physicists, right? Also, Sir Ken Robinson is also a very good educator and critic about the education system. That standardized tests and all that is, not good for the teaching and learning. Well, again, I like Einstein's when students are encouraged to prioritize finding the right answer, right? They may stop questioning, exploring, or thinking deep. And this is, I think, one of the things that I use a lot, not because it's Einstein, but because, it's exactly what I like, the way I teach. When I ask a question, like I did right now, right, about the feather and the hammer, right, you already knew the answer, the right answer. But most students are going to say that the hammer is going to find the ground first. And so I ask the question before I teach anything about gravity. And the purpose is really to identify their initial ideas, their misconceptions, right? So in order for us to change ourselves, we need first to be aware of our ways of thinking, right? Of our mistakes. We're not going to change if we don't accept that we were wrong, right? Basically. So you need to and also, I like to give students a chance to be creative because, everybody that found new things, they didn't have classes about it, right? Thomas Edison didn't have a class how to make the light bulb. He found it himself, right? There were no people giving him instructions. He didn't go to school to learn how to create a light bulb. So he had to find that by himself. So when I ask a question, that's mostly a question based on common misconceptions. Okay? So the question is to give students a chance to come up with an answer. Sometimes even develop their creativity. Okay? Give them a chance to think about the topic before being told what it is. Okay? So when I ask a question, the rubric to evaluate the answer is not based on the right answer. It's based on your ability to create and to give a reasoning on you can reason that the heavier object is going to fall first because it's heavy. And that is your reason. Okay? So sometimes you might understand something, but you say, I explained something and say, I understand, and oh yeah, the gravity is the same, right? The acceleration of gravity is the same, and then you stop questioning it anymore, right? Because somebody told you that, you accepted that, and then you don't question. So you fail to test your understanding, right? Should I do a test? Should I go to the moon and do the test? Right? And we didn't go to the moon, but we saw an astronaut that went there and did the test. So that is reassuring that you're there. Another way is also very important is what we understand about what learning is, right? So you might think that memorizing and give an answer, the right answer, that is learning. Okay? And if you believe on that, then that's it. You stop there. You don't need to do anything else. Another thing very important is motivation. Motivation to learn. And sometimes that's difficult for me to engage the students because they've been trained to come to school, do all the requirements that the instructor gives them, so they get the grade, they pass, and they move on to the next one. And 6 months later, they already forgot everything else because, that's passed, right? I already passed that one. I don't need to think about it, or, it's a temporary understanding, temporary learning. Yes.
Some classes, I hope I won't remember anything.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's true sometimes. Yeah. And another point also important is the emotional, right? If you feel anxious already, coming to class because it's math and math is so difficult, then you waste a lot of energy worrying about it. So I try to make things. So, like I said, that question about the free fall, right? Free fall, right? So my first step is to ask students, what is that you think about it? Just write down and justify. You're going to be graded or evaluated based on your justification, on your reasoning, not if the answer is correct. The second step of the same question, now after the lecture, you have access to anything you want. You can look at the Google or ChatGPT, whatever. Find the right answer and make the second part of that question. So this is a whole assignment. The assignment has 4 steps. First step, initial ideas. Justification is the criteria. Second step is the right answer, because now you have access. You have heard me. You have discuss with all your classmates, and you have access to the books, you have access to internet, or can ask the president if you want. Well, maybe not. Maybe he doesn't know much about that. But you can ask anybody you want. Then the third step, right? 1, 2, 3. The third step now is a moment of reflection. I want the student to think why they had that initial idea. So now it's becoming the understanding that, here on Earth, we do have air resistance. And that's going to prevent the feather to fall at the same time as the hammer. So now you are, evaluating, what's happening. And that's where it shows, where you really learn, because you realize you were misled by the fact that there were other factors. Sometimes there are other factors in that influence the experiment, and you didn't consider that. And so this is the method I'm talking about. It's called problem posing, misconception based. So here, problem posed, the questioning is used as a tool for to evaluate misconceptions, basically. Okay, and So I have three steps that I explain, right? One is the initial ideas, second is the most accurate response, third is the reflection, and the last part, now you start questioning, yourself. You have to, the student has to create a question based on that misconception, and then find the answer. It's a self-assessment, right? So if you understand that, and hopefully 3 months of class will be able to change the attitude of the student in order to face any challenge or any problem or any new content that you're going to learn. If you use this strategy, you become an independent learner. So that's my goal. So, I use this approach, problem posing, we generate questions, the pedagogy of these conceptions or starting points, productive failure. It's the fact that you had a misunderstanding does not mean you failing, right? That means it's actually positive that you identified your misconception. So I give credit for you to identify a misconception. And then the reflective thinking, when you think about, why you have that. So what this has to do with compliance? Well, it's changing passive to active inquiry. The fear of error, learning through struggle, memorization instead to conceptual understanding. No memorization anymore. So the first step to avoid conformity is to become aware of the thing. So one of the greatest difficulties that I have in a class when I try to implement this is students understand that I'm not looking for the right answer. Okay? If they give me the right answer, right away, then it's kind of the whole process, fails, right? So, you have, I bring a new topic, so they're not really supposed to know. But if they already know, then, it's that kind of thing that, is that a memorization or a real understanding, So then they have to question that. So resisting conformity in education is a progressive shift from passive compliance to intellectual autonomy through awareness, disruption, and reconstruction of learning. So recognize conformity, disruption, replace answers with questions. So, you don't really need to give answers, but you need to create a good question. Right? I think Einstein said that as well. I'm not looking for the answers. I'm looking for the big question. Because if you are able to construct the right question, you'll be able to find the answer. Right? If you don't even know how to question, then it becomes, you can't find the right answer. Decentering the authority from the start. Do not expect the instructors are going to give you all the answers to you. So try to, find the truth through there are other medias of information that you can have, especially now with internet and books and ChatGPT, Google. Reconstruction. Now, the reconstruction is to build a collaborative learning community. In my class, I expect the students to share information between themselves and to teach each other, right? That's the ideal situation. So they start learning how to collaborate, not working as individuals, right? Become a community. And I create a collaborative learning community on a Google Doc where they all have access to it. The students, they put all their assignments in one electronic portfolio, and that link is accessible to all students. So they can visit somebody else's work and see how they've done. They can contact that student and ask, I'm having difficulty to do this, how did you do that? So this way, it's supported. They don't rely on me, but they rely on the whole class. And then cultivate the intellectual autonomy. Some of the ineffective ways of studying is like rereading notes. This is some of the common, strategies that students do to learn. They think they read the chapter several times, that's going to make it. And they're just memorizing, the whole chapter without really thinking, questioning, right? What's going on there? Highlighting, without thinking. You highlight a bunch of words. I see a lot of students, they take the yellow marker and highlight here, highlight this word, highlight that word. What's that? Why did you highlighted that for, right? If you highlight something, you have to question. I'm highlighting because I don't understand, or it's not highlight to memorize, right? Bring a last minute study, that's the worst thing I think it happens. Students, wait till the last 2 weeks of this semester. Oh, I need to do all my assignments now, and I see that happening year after year, Students just don't do anything throughout the whole semester, and then at the end they manage to put everything there, and they think they doing anything good, but it's just lying to themselves that they are learning. Or copying notes word by word without putting any questioning, and watching solutions instead of solving the problem, right? Try to solve it. Doesn't matter if it's wrong, but try to solve it, because that makes your brain activate and exercise. Multitasking. Listen to music, talking to somebody, and at the same time, trying to solve. And then overconfidence. I get it. Oh yeah, I get it. Right? They both want to arrive on the same floor. I get it. Somebody said that to me, and that's it. If a strategy doesn't make you think, struggle a little bit, or check your understanding, it's probably not very effective. I think this last sentence here is extremely telling what's going on. This is some of the mechanisms of conformity, standardized learning, structure-centered authority, reward and punishment. Oh, you didn't do your assignment? F, right? Pre-structured knowledge, procedural learning over conceptual understanding. So I had so many students, come to me. Even my son once, I was trying to tutor him, like math, and I was trying to explain him. And he came to me and said, come on, just give me the answer. Just tell me, show me how to do, Why do you spend all this time going around and around, I said, okay. So that was it. I said, go find somebody else to tutor you, because I can't tutor you, right? And so this is the common behavior, with students, Just show me how to, why I'm wasting all this time with all these explanations, right? I just, learning how to do something, that's for a manufacturing job, right? If you want to be a follower, so then that's what you should do, right? Just learn how to do things. And especially now, today's, way things are going, you're going to lose your job, because AI is there. So what can we do to prevent conformity? Another thing I want to point, is there any instructor here or any faculty? No, right? No faculty. I wish there were a faculty here.
I taught psychology for many years, but I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm a student now.
Okay, one of the problems that I see with our education system, especially at college level, is that first of all, our faculty is not trained on education approaches or methods. That's one thing. The other thing is the majority of faculty are the product of the academic, and they stick on the academic and continue there. They have no chance to go out and work in the field. They all the product of that thing, and it's like being growing up in our culture. So you don't see anything change, right? If you continue there, you're not going to change anything because you accept everything. This is the way we always been, and this is the way it's going to continue to be forever. So that's one point. So traditional education often rewards correctness, speed, and compliance. The students learn to avoid mistakes and hide uncertainties. Well, the uncertainty is the source of learning, right? The fact that you are confused, that you are uncertain, this is great because it shows that you have space to learn something. To transform education, we must replace conformity with a culture that values questioning, reflection, and productive use of misconceptions. Now, just to put in perspective, Emile Durkheim is a sociologist, and his view of society is that conformity is somewhat necessary, right, to keep the order of society. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is that how much guidance, we have to manage it, how much guidance we give to students, right, to have some control, but also not to overcome and let them completely dependent. So there has to be some sort of balance between conformity and ability to be somewhat free in intellectual autonomy. And okay, so I'm going to stop there, and hopefully, you have.
I just want to say something about this.
Oh yeah.